Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Combating Cancer. My name is Gwen Kelly, and I'm your host. If this is your first time tuning in today, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. It truly means a lot that you would take the time to listen to be a part of this community. For any of my first time listeners, a little background information about me is that I was diagnosed with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer at the age of 19. The reason I created this podcast was because I wanted there to be a safe and honest space for people who are either in active treatment, in remission, grieving the loss of a loved one, caregiving for someone going through cancer, or even someone who simply wants to learn more about how to better support someone they love who is facing this disease. Cancer can feel incredibly isolating. It can feel like the world around you continues moving forward while you're stuck trying to process something that has completely changed your life. One of the biggest goals I've always had with this platform is to remind people that they are not alone in what they're feeling, because there are so many parts of the cancer experience that people don't openly talk about. Not just the diagnosis or the treatments, but the emotional shift that happens after your life has been turned upside down. And that actually leads into what I want to talk about today. Recently, I've been reflecting on something that has been very heavy on my heart, something I didn't even realize I have been struggling with as much as I have. And that is the feeling of having very little patience when it comes to waiting for life to unfold. More specifically, the feeling of waiting for my life to feel like it's actually beginning again. And I know that might sound strange to some people because technically life never stopped. I'm still here, I'm still living. But when you go through something like cancer, it can feel like your life paused while everyone else continued moving forward. People around you are graduating, starting careers, getting married, reaching those big milestones. And during that same time, you're sitting in hospital rooms, in treatment chairs, in waiting rooms, hoping that your next scan doesn't bring bad news. Because of that, your relationship with time starts to change. When you're diagnosed with a terminal illness like brain cancer, the future becomes something that feels very uncertain. It becomes hard to think 5 years ahead or even sometimes 1 year ahead. For me, the future often meant the next scan, next doctor's appointments, the next treatment. And sometimes it simply meant getting through the week. When you live that way long enough, you start training your mind to focus only on the present moment. And in many ways, that mindset is what helps you survive treatment. Because when the situation in front of you feels overwhelming, the only way forward is to take things one day at a time. But what I didn't realize is that mindset doesn't just disappear once treatment slows down. Now, before anyone thinks this episode is just me complaining about my lack of patience, I want to clarify something. When I say I struggle with patience, I'm not saying I'm sitting around stomping my foot demanding everything right now. I always joke that I'm not the girl from Willy Wonka saying, "Daddy, I want a pony, Daddy, I want it now." That's not what this is. Although sometimes I do wish life worked that way, because if it did, I probably would have asked for a few things already, like maybe a lifetime supply of clear MRIs. But what I mean is that when you've experienced something that makes you question whether you'll even have time in the future, waiting starts to feel very different. One of the hardest parts of this is when people say things like, just be patient, or everything will happen when it's supposed to happen. And I know when people say those things, they mean well. But sometimes those words land differently when you've spent time wondering whether you'd even have a future at all. Because when someone tells you to be patient, what they're really saying is that there's plenty of time. And that's just something I don't automatically assume anymore. For example, people will say things like, "Oh, you're so young, you have so much time to figure out things in life of what you want." And logically, I really understand what they mean. But there was a time in my life where I wasn't even sure I was going to get the chance to grow older. There was a time where I genuinely thought my parents might outlive me. There was a time where the only thing I was hoping for was my next scan to come back stable. And I think the reason this hits so deeply is because of what waiting actually looked like during cancer. Waiting for scans is something that's really hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. The best way I can describe it is that it feels like being stuck in the middle of a highway during a whiteout snowstorm. And yes, I'm from Minnesota, so if that analogy didn't give it away, you can't see anything. You don't know what's ahead of you. You don't know what's behind you. You don't know what directions things are about to go. You're gripping the steering wheel for dear life, praying you don't get hit, praying you don't crash, and praying that somehow the snow will clear so you can see headlights again. And that's really what waiting for scan results feel like. It's this overwhelming uncertainty where you're holding your breath, blasting Jesus Take the Wheel, hoping the next piece of news isn't going to completely change your life again. And when you've lived through that kind of waiting, it changes the way you see time. It just does. because you realize how fragile it really is. You realize how quickly everything can change. And when you realize that, you stop wanting to postpone things that matter. You stop wanting to say someday, you start wanting to say now. Not out of impatience, but out of appreciation. Because you understand something that many people haven't had to confront yet. That time is not guaranteed. And because of that, you start realizing something else. You can't spend your life worrying about what other people think about the way you're choosing to live your life. When you face the possibility of losing your time, you start caring a lot less about whether someone else thinks you're moving too fast, chasing the wrong thing, or living your life differently than they expected. Because the truth is, most of the people giving advice about patience are doing so from the comfort of assuming they have endless time. But when you've had to confront the possibility of losing that time, your priorities change. You start realizing that your life is not meant to be lived according to someone else's timeline. And that can feel very uncomfortable for people. They might not understand why you're chasing something so passionately, why you're taking risks, or why you're refusing to wait around for life to happen. But the reality is that no one else lived through your diagnosis the way you did. People may have walked beside you during treatment, and their supports mattered deeply. But they weren't the ones sitting in the MRI machine listening to the beeping as the machine rumbles around you. So no one else gets to decide how you move forward. Cancer has a way of stripping life down to what truly matters. And when you've seen how fragile time really is, you stop asking for permission to go after the things that make you feel alive. Cancer has a way of forcing you to slow down and look at life differently. Because patience is often described as a virtue, something that builds character, something that helps people grow. But the truth is that feels very different when you've experienced your life being ripped away from you. Patience may make sense for someone who assumes they have endless time. But when you've had to face the possibility of losing that time and losing your life, waiting can feel much heavier. And sometimes you just don't want to wait anymore. And you know what? I think maybe that's okay, and maybe it's okay to live life with a little bit more urgency. And it's okay to chase the things that matter to you. And it's okay to build the life you want while you still have the chance, because if cancer teaches you anything, if it taught me anything, is that time is not something to take for granted. And if you're listening to this and you've gone through cancer yourself, I think you understand exactly what I mean. Your relationship with time changes forever. Patience may be a virtue, but when you face the possibility of your parents outliving you, you learn that some things in life are worth chasing now. Because yesterday is gone, tomorrow isn't promised, and if cancer teaches you anything, it's this: don't wait for permission to live your life. Well, that is the end of today's episode of Combating Cancer. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you or someone you know would like to come on and share your story, or if you have a business inquiry, please feel free to reach out to me. Once again, I appreciate all the support this community has given me. I feel truly incredibly blessed. And that is all I have for you guys today. I will chat with you all next Wednesday.